Now, also in the subject of raising funds and you're looking for partnerships, you've had opportunity to work with governments, right?
Once,
Okay.
yes.
What was that like?
Actually, what we did with government is at NILAB, we tendered for a contract.
Yeah.
It was a World Bank contract. A lot of people think government gave us a grant, but it was a contract from Kenya ICT Authority, and they were really good partners. And what they wanted to do was pilot an incubation program. So because we were the first incubator in the sense of tech, so we won the tender based on the fact that we had started something.
Right.
By that time, I'd already bought NILAB from Tony Ndongo, and so we tried that out. But other than that, I have never worked with government. Yes, there's a fact that the president came to visit. There's a fact that I have had a couple of interactions with of the former president, the current president, and the one before that. But I've never worked with government. I have never deployed a project with government. That was the only project I deployed. It just became bigger than what it was in the media space, because it was the first time a small company had won $1 million+ dollars in a contract for something so innovative and so different, and it was featured on Forbes. But other than that, I have not won any other government tenders. I have never been given a government job. I have never, worked in any government department. Nothing. It just everything you probably could have seen maybe with the president did the KICC thing, where those are our own initiative as NILAB. And at that point, NILAB and Seven Seas and a few other guys, people like Vincent, who I mentioned earlier, who created a group of people and tried to convince the president to come and see what innovation is all about. So I do not have an in-depth relationship of working with government at all. Neither do I have I ever received any grants from government.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Now, on to the next subject, which is very close to my soul, is mental health, especially for entrepreneurs. You have had co-founders, I think, for most of your journey, but then for solopreneurs, there can be a lot of pressure because you really don't have anyone to lean on. But even then, when you're dealing with whatever mental health condition you're going through that may or may not be induced by your entrepreneurship journey, you're still pretty much going through it alone, right? So have you had any instances where you've had to sit down and reckon with, this is affecting me in ABC manner? What steps did you do to mitigate?
So I have had 3 experiences that I could just address. Co-founder, NILAB initially, and then solo, who hustle with a co-founder, and now solo founder. So I have had both experiences with co-founders and solo founder,
Right.
As a solo founder experience. First, I have to say this. It's easier when you have a co-founder.
Yeah.
Always easier when you have a co-founder by a great percentage. You can share the burden. Somebody I could be here doing this interview with you, excuse me, and then my CTO or my co-founder is solving business problems. Right now I can tell you top of my mind, I know there's an engineering meeting going on, there's a growth meeting going on, there's a culture meeting going on in the afternoon, and I need to be in all of them. Okay. As a solo founder. So as a CEO, I need to be in engineering for updates for the products we're launching next week, growth on the go-to-market strategy on what they're doing next week. There's a lot going on. I have to meet the teams later for culture so that we can play a game and get to know where everybody's at. So, but I can't be in 2 places as a solo founder.
Yeah.
It's the second thing about being a solo founder is that there's what we call the bus effect. If you get knocked down by a bus, and God forbid, touch wood, what happens to the company if you're a solo founder? That's the end of it.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if you haven't created structures of people to take over from you or created structures that can sustain the organization going forward. And so with Kidato, I made sure I've created those structures. I have amazing managers. Whether I'm there or not there, they can run with it. That's why I'm able to be here.
Right.
But I can assure you that, so when on a co-founder first, the 99 or 90% plus of startups that fail because of co-founder conflict.
Yes.
So despite the fact that having a co-founder is a good idea, there are a lot of aspects that can cause failure having a co-founder. Usually it starts from expectations. What's your role? What's my role? Okay, if we are running the failure effect together, your role is to interview guests, my role is to find guests and deal with distribution. Okay, your role is to interview guests and deal with finance. If those roles are not very clear, okay, then we're going to fail. So I'm trying to interview people. You're trying to interview them as well. You're trying to look for guests. I'm trying to look for guests. They could cross over at some point, but there's need for clarity. You're interviewing guests. I'm looking for sponsors for the podcast. There's a clarity of roles. It's number one. That usually brings a lot of issues. In tech companies, how it causes chaos is the fact that I am the CEO, you are the CTO, you're building the product, I'm supposed to be selling it. But I keep on asking you to add features and more features, and I'm not selling what you've already built. So you get discouraged. 3 months later, 10 hours a day, you've done almost, 900 hours or 600 to 900 hours of work. I have never brought a single customer. You are so tired. I'm still fresh saying, if we add this, our customers will buy, know. That causes conflict.
Yeah.
The second one is finance, and you notice that finance can be an issue in the sense of, wow, who's getting paid what? Okay, so here I am, I haven't brought a single customer. Here you are working every day writing code. We're getting paid the same amount of money. You could start feeling, hey, you know what, and that point you really don't have money to pay each other, so maybe you haven't fundraised.
Yeah.
So whatever little you had saved, you put on the table is what you're getting, 50,000, and you're doing most of the work. You're away from the family. I'm just there in speaking engagements and telling people how amazing we are building, but I've never brought in a customer.
Right.
So it's payments or access to those finances. You can find one person has more financial needs than the other person. So I have a family, you don't have a family, so which means I need more money, but then I'm doing less work than you.
Yeah.
Another thing I think I've noticed along the way for co-founder conflict is equity. Again, think about the same setup. How did we split equity?
Yeah.
Is it a 50-50 split? Is it a 60-40 split? Did you come up with the failure effect idea? So you have 70-30, but with my knowledge and my network and my resources, I'm bringing more value to you than you could have had even if you had 100%. So why am I getting 30%? Okay, yet it's my network you're tapping to in terms of sponsors, in terms of guests, in terms of equipment. Maybe I'm the one who knows where to get a recording studio easier, faster. That's a conflict. Equity split has to be discussed very early, agreed on. Finances have to be discussed early, agreed on. Roles have to be discussed early, agreed on. Okay, these are things that will cause conflict. The other is usually perception and communication.
Yeah.
You didn't show up to work at 8, you show up to work at 10. And I'm unhappy because I showed up at work at 8 every single day, but you show up at 10, you show up at 11. And now we're having a fight because I'm thinking, why are you showing up to work late?
Yeah.
But you're the CTO, you probably are working until midnight. Which means every day you've worked longer hours than me. I'm just assuming you should be in the office early.
Yeah.
And when you come, you're probably tired. And sometimes the work you're doing as an engineer is not visible to me, especially if I don't have engineering experience. You're writing back end, and what I want to see is the front end that the button is working, and it's still not working.
Yes.
But it requires some back end work to be done. So communication is that this is what I'm doing tonight, so I'll show up tomorrow or this week at midday because I prefer working at night as an engineer because it's quiet, no phone calls, no interruptions. I can focus on code. And that's what engineers do. They work in blocks of time. And so there's a lot of issues if you have a co-founder. Okay? Learning to manage them is learning to manage a relationship or a marriage.
Okay.
As a solo founder, there's a lot of challenges again. As I said, the bus effect, the narrow viewpoint. Like you can tend to get caught up in only what you think is right, but you don't have anybody to challenge your thinking, to tell you that direction may not work because of X, Y, Z. You are not multi-skilled. There's no way unless, you're a genius. You can be extremely good software engineer, extremely good at building a growth plan and a marketing plan, extremely good at managing a team, extremely good with finances, okay, and managing all the finances, doing your taxes and everything else. And actually, time is finite. You can only have enough time to do one thing. So whatever you need to execute as a solo founder takes longer because of lack of skills, doing the wrong thing, limited amount of time you can do this, lack of trust from investors. We're like, okay, fine, we're giving one person money. They could literally just get sick tomorrow and we lose our $1 million investment. So there's all those challenges, which now brings in the mental health challenges in the sense that you're doing so much. You're not sleeping well. You're not eating well. You can't take a break. You can't go for 21 leave days, or even a week. Something breaks. Even when you're on holiday, Diani, chilling out, you're sorting out issues. Which means maybe your girlfriend or your wife or your children are really unhappy because they're not getting the full attention that you need to give them. And then that brings the breakdown of
Okay.
And now, if you're solo, so you have employees who, they have families, they have rent to pay, school fees to pay, medical bills to pay. You still are responsible for their lives. Even when you're on break, you're thinking about all these things. So I guess the question I've addressed here is a question of solo or co-founders,
Yeah.
which direction to go and how and what you should look out for.
Yeah.
The question of mental health now comes from where? It comes from the pressure of all of that.
Yeah.
And yes, I have had challenges, and in the sense of I felt lost. I lost myself. I remember this one day, actually 2 years ago, after I raised the money, and it was, I think it was April, I had just on record time raised $1.6 million. So this was the most amount of money I had for a startup that was less than 6 months old. Actually, it had just been registered for 3 months in Delaware, so it was legally 3 months old.
Yeah.
And I've just raised the money. And I drove home, parked the car, sat in the car for a few minutes, like every other person who has a family who sits in the car before they go into the house. And absolutely from nowhere, I started crying.
Oh.
I cried and I cried and I couldn't tell why I was crying, and I was so sad and I cried and I was like, wow. I was like, when was the last time you cried, Sam? I was like, I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
It had been years since I sat down and I cried.
Yeah.
And I cried and I cried, and it really broke me. And from that point, it was such a low journey, because there you are, you walk up, you meet people, your friends, oh, congratulations, we saw you on the biggest tech magazine in the world, listed over there, having disrupted a full traditional model of education. Everybody's congratulating you. You know how this goes. You
Yeah.
know? And you are so sad. You're just smiling at people. I think it ended up. So of course my dad had been sick. He was on stage. He was on the last days of his life.
Okay.
So he died 3 months after that, and my grandfather as well. So I was also dealing with that and dealing with the company and dealing
Yeah.
with all that. But I have to say that it was the first time in my life that I thought to myself, you need to go look for help. And so I looked for a therapist. I think I went through 3 therapists before I
Yeah.
found the right one, who I'm still using to date. And so I do encourage, and so one of the things that made me go to therapy, brings in YC again, was the fact that YC has allocated us a therapist.
Okay.
Because they know this happens.
Right.
Okay. And so she's amazing. And so of course, being an African man, being like, unaenda kutafuta help for what? What do you
Yeah.
need help? So it was really, really hard getting on that call with her. And then finally I got the courage to email her and say, you know what, I think I need help. And so she told me, list down the things you're going through. So I listed them down, I sent them to her. And when we were talking on that Zoom call, I remember the shock on her face. First of all, this is the same person who's dealt with a lot of amazing YC companies. And I remember her looking at me and going like, wow, you are dealing with way, way more than an average human should be dealing with.
Right.
Way, way more. And the second thing is that you're so hard on yourself that you're not being able to do these things right.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I took myself easy and I said, hey, wow, okay, this is interesting. I always thought I was underperforming. That's why I'm hard on myself. So I'm overperforming based on my circumstances and based on the environment I'm in. And I'm not soft on myself. It was the first time I learned to forgive myself for what people would call failure, or things that didn't go the right way or the way I expected them to go.
Right.
And then from there, I realized, wow, it's really good to have an objective brain. So I never see therapists as therapists to me. They are coaches, It's why you are here. They are talking to me, having objectivity on what I'm going through, because I'm too subjective. I'm too immersed in it. I cannot see, what is in front of me. Okay. And so you come over and say, you know what, if I look at what you're looking at, this is what I'm seeing. And suddenly I'm like, I get more clarity. It's like my eyes stop being blurry and something becomes clearer. And I'm like, oh, now I see them. And now I can choose which one to deal with. So I always think of my therapist as a coach who has got, the training in psychology.
Yeah.
Because even now I still go once a month and I put things on the table and they're like, oh, yeah, this is how you're seeing it. These are the 3 ways to see it. And I'm like, oh, I would never have seen that by myself. Yes, because my thoughts are, there's a pattern that I've grown up with. And so I do encourage a lot of people to get therapy, even if you're not building a startup, even if you're just going through life, even if you just got married, even if you just take find an objective person who is not your friend, who is not your relative, who is objectively looking at you, who you pay actually to think with you through
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
And then you have more clarity. It's the same concept of having a mentor or an advisor or a board. But in this case, it's a very removed relationship because you're paying for that 1 hour and you're going to go back and think for yourself and solve the
Right.
problem. They want to solve the problem for you. So my experience at NILAB, I had seen all the young men come in and have mental health issues, but I had never realized the experience until I went through it. And usually I tell them, take a break, go to the gym, eat healthy, sleep well, whatever you could Google and find answers
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
It was never go to a therapist and sit and do this. I literally was their therapist in that case, which means I also carried all their problems with me.
Right, yes.
Because I was their only investor at that given point.
Yeah.
And so I remember one young man who came over in the morning. I think he had gotten, he fired his whole team and he was dumped by his girlfriend. It was just crazy, So yeah, get help. There's nothing African or masculine or, about you that you can't get help. Get help. Or wait until it's really, really bad, because that's the other option you have. So you'd rather avoid that.
Yes.
So you either get help early when you start feeling, hey, I could need help, or you wait until you're at the rock bottom, because usually you will find yourself at the rock bottom. And that's a dangerous place because your choices and the decisions you make are really poor. I don't know how much time we have, but just to extend this a little further, when you have clarity, you're not likely to incline to drugs,
Yes.
alcohol,
Yeah.
promiscuous behavior. You're not. You can choose. You can choose to delay gratification.
Yeah.
You can choose to delay pleasure because you still have the capacity to get it when you want to get it. Okay, so you can say, I'll drink on Fridays. Okay, or I drink once a week. I don't
Yeah.
have to drink every day. I don't have to participate in this behavior because it's not necessary. It doesn't add a lot of value to me. I can decide to not do it, or I can decide to choose when to do it and with who. Okay, and I was reading a very powerful book by Jordan Peterson about the same thing. When you have clarity, you can make this decision. When you don't have clarity, then what you do is you're so low on yourself. You want to watch a movie that excites you. You want to drink alcohol. You want to be with friends who are definitely not adding a lot of value. You find yourself super low in the decisions you're making. Now, you take those two people, who is likely to make better decisions for their company?
Right. The one with the clarity.
Yes.
Clearly,
So what you need is clarity,
Yeah.
which means, for you to get clarity, you need to do all the basic things, exercise, rest,
Yes.
whatever. But at the same time, you need somebody who points you out that what you're doing right now may cause problems in the future. So if you're wondering, do I go for therapy? Don't I go for therapy? Ask yourselves, what are the choices I'm making on a day-to-day basis? What are the things I seem inclined to do without even myself? It's like they control me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I don't control them, So, I'm dependent on these things that are definitely not good in the long term. And then now, you're in a point where you need help.
Yeah.
Yes. Because when you can control those things, when you can leave the club at 10 instead of 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
you're now in control of that. When you can say, I need to sleep early so I can wake up and go run my podcast, you're in control of whatever you were doing the previous evening, whether you're going for a party or you hang out with friends. Now you're getting more clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.